The first white settlers came to our neck of the woods in the mid-1700s. You have to remember that Maryland was still a colony of England at that time, and the English were anxious to see the wilderness turned into profitable farms. A man by the name of James Carroll applied for a warrant for over 4,300 acres of unclaimed land in what was then called Western Maryland. It was the area west of the Patapsco River where we now live. One of the tracts was called Five Daughters, named after the daughters of a descendant of the Carroll family. By 1780 or so, much of Five Daughters had been broken up and sold off. When Isaac Atlee arrived in these parts, he purchased most of the upper half of this tract. In 1797, he had it surveyed and laid out into a town consisting of 28 lots that he called New Windsor. It was crisscrossed by 2 streets, High and Bath. His aim was to create a town that would support his inn and tavern, so buyers were not given the deeds of ownership unless they promised to build a house that was at least 20 by 20 feet in size and 2 stories high. Soon the dense forest was cleared to build homes and businesses. Now remember that most of these early houses were made of logs. If you look at some of the old homes and stores on our main street today, under that siding you'll find the original log construction with timbers cut from the surrounding forests. Well, soon feed stores, blacksmiths, and other new businesses started popping up like mushrooms to accommodate all of the travelers coming through town. And families began to move into the area, attracted by the fertile fields and forests. This is why Isaac Atlee is rightly considered the founder of our town. And you know, in a sense, he's never really left us. You'll find his grave and tombstone over there in the Presbyterian Cemetery. The town was an exciting place back then. Aside from the visitors arriving by stagecoach, there were wagons passing through all day, carrying the region's agricultural products to big city markets to be sold. The wagons would return to these parts with gunpowder, salt, maybe some calico cloth for the women, or other items that couldn't be made or grown locally. The busy roads became rutted and had to be maintained, so occasionally tolls were charged, just like on some of our highways today. The Liberty and New Windsor Toll Road, built in 1816, ran from New Windsor to what was then the Old Liberty Road. This could carry a body from Liberty Town to Frederick or all the way to Baltimore. Travelers using the toll road were charged according to the size of their vehicles and number of horses. For example, if you had a wagon with 2 horses and wanted to go to Sam's Creek Road, the round-trip toll was 12 cents. A lot of money for those times. Even people and livestock who were walking were expected to pay for the privilege. The town began a slow, steady growth between 1816 and 1862, and many additional businesses were started. One was a general store right across the street where the Ark Apartments are today. It later became known as the Ark Store because the owner boasted that, like Noah's Ark, he carried at least 2 of everything a body could need, from A to Z, from apples to yarn. And at one time, we had 3 grist mills operating in town. Andrew Nicodemus owned one of them. He called it the Merchant's Mill, and it stood right at the foot of High Street on the other side of the tracks. Farmers needed these mills to grind their corn, wheat, and barley into flour, which either ended up as a loaf of bread in our town or was shipped to a big city like Baltimore for sale in its markets. The town didn't have a post office in the early years, so folks had to ride the 4 rough miles to Uniontown to pick up and drop off their letters. They decided to petition the government for a post office of their own, and in 1816 they got their wish. Of course, with a post office, we also got a mailman for those outside of town, and folks eagerly awaited the arrival of his cart each day. Town residents had to go to the post office to pick up their mail, and still do today. The area now known as Carroll County was originally part of Baltimore and Frederick counties, with the county line running more or less diagonally through Westminster. If you lived in New Windsor and wanted to vote or use the courts, you had to travel the 20 or so miles to Frederick over unpaved roads. This was also a hardship for people in Taneytown, Union Bridge, and elsewhere. So in 1813, a good number of them petitioned the legislature and requested that they have their own county. It took a while, but in 1837, the state's General Assembly agreed. It took equal parts of Baltimore and Frederick counties and formed Carroll County, and Westminster became the county seat. Soon, folks there built a stately courthouse, a jail, and an almshouse to take care of the poor. Back in New Windsor, the building boom continued. In 1830, some residents erected a duplex on Bath Street. One half was the Union Church, the first official church in town, and it served all denominations. The other half of the building was a school, and it was one of the earliest in town, run by a Mr. Curry.